Week 4 DFS Jam here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. I'm Peter Overzet. I'm going to be hanging out for the next hour talking all things Week 4 DFS. We're going to be drafting some Battle Royale teams on Underdog. We're going to be talking a little DraftKings as well if you guys are playing salary cap DFS. And happy to answer any questions and talk through this slate. Let's get going here. I'm going to get my screen shared. And I tend to draft later in the week. So these are going to be some of my first drafts of the week in the Battle Royale. And you guys can watch me wrap my head around this slate in real time. I did write my column this morning that is up on, actually, I don't think it's up on Fantasy Life yet. I filed it this morning. It should be up later today. One of the fun things about this slate that I wrote about is that we have a truly incredible late game window. Generally, we have had, I think, week 2, week 3, we had one game with a total over 50 points. It hasn't been, slates with super attractive game environments. It's looking like that's going to change this week. I'll show you guys here just a quick overview of the slate before we start, drafting teams here. In the early window, if we look at the over-unders, we have one really nice game as far as total. Bills Saints has a 48-point total. Now, most of that is being carried by the Bills team total there, but it's still nice to know we have a spot where we're expected to see over 48 points. But then things really get fun in this 4 p.m. window. Colts Rams, total of 49.5. Jags Niners, total of 47. Ravens Chiefs, total of 48.5. And then Bears Raiders, 47.5. So to have 4 games in the late window, all with totals over 47, that's not normal for us this day and age. So very excited to have some really good games to work with. And one thing I wrote in the article that I'll post later is, it's hard to take advantage of this dynamic on Underdog. Once we draft our teams, they're locked, right? Unless there's an injury, yes, you do get a swap. But on DraftKings, you can late swap. You can change any part of your lineup that doesn't have any players from the 1 p.m. games. And that allows you to push an information edge based on what happens early. And one of the things I talk about in the column is trying to get information early, specifically in the form of teams and players that are going to be low owned. Because basically, you kind of need to know, hey, can I eat the chalk in the late window? And this week, we have some really good chalk. I mean, CMC is going to be the most popular running back on the slate. Puka Nacua is going to be the most popular wide receiver on the slate. If your early team crushes or the players you have going early, you can eat that chalk. You want to let it ride. You want to play the best plays if you have a lead. Now, if you're behind, say your stack in the early window flops, you play a Detroit Lions stack, it does nothing. Well, you probably don't want to play CMC in Puka in the late slate, knowing how popular they're going to be. And that's not your path to climb the leaderboard. So that's a dynamic on DraftKings to take advantage of. I did put on the wheel for today, one of the prompts I put was late game hammer only. Even if it's not giving you a strategic advantage, it does give you a nice sweat when you can charge late with all late game plays. So I figured that could be a fun wrinkle to add to the wheel. I have a few left over from last week as well. And if you guys have any suggestions for build types or challenges to complete here, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will add them here as well. What's up, Graphic? What's up, Ghost? What's up, Chad Candles? Let's dive right into it over on Underdog. Like I said, I believe this is my first draft. Yeah, I did a playbook draft. I do a show on my YouTube channel on Mondays called the Portfolio Review. I generally do one first look draft. But other than that, I have not dove in yet this week, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. I will register for one of these, and then I'll spin the wheel, and we'll see what kind of build we want to set off with this. All right, here we go. We did, I don't know if we did this one last week. I thought I removed any that we doubled up on, but this is min 1 Q tag player. We actually have a decent amount of Q tags on the slate. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, again, he practiced in limited form yesterday. Hopefully we'll get another concrete update on him today. He's obviously a good click anytime he has a chance to play. Bill is really the only running back carrying a Q tag right now, which is pretty interesting. Although I think on this slate and just based on his usage, Bill is probably not on the 6-person draft menu. As far as wide receiver Q tags, it looks like Tedaroya McMillan was upgraded to a probable. Xavier Worthy, of course, has that Q tag. That's like a total mystery box as far as what we're going to get from Xavier Worthy in his first game back. Terry McLaurin is a big one as far as the Q tag. Jawan Jennings, those would be the other two there. So looking at all my options for Q tag, it does really seem like Jaden Daniels is the one I'd want to get to. Kyle Pitts isn't a bad Q tag either. 3 straight games with 5+ targets. But we have the 101 here. We are going to take CMC. I will say, like right off the rip, looking at stuff, if you want to take Jonathan Taylor 102 this week, I certainly am not going to fault you for it. But for my money, Puka Nacua should be going 102. And he should certainly be going ahead of Bijan Robinson and James Cook. He has just been an absolute monster. 3 straight games, over 18 points. His usage is insane. He really is close to like an old school Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, just jam him every week type of wide receiver that we've had. So I think Puka Nacua, even at 105, is undervalued this week. Ooh, I love this suggestion from Chad. 0 top 12 ADP players. Teams aren't bad, but you'll be unique. Could be sacrificing too much projection, though. You know what, Chad, I don't think this is a bad thought. We have certainly had, I will say this, I think we loosen it a little bit. Oh, we can do it for fun. We can do top 12. I would say like what I actually think you could get away with would be like 0 top 6 players, because we've seen plenty of slates. There was a couple of them last year where not a single top 6 player, hit the optimal lineup. And just skipping round 1 would have been a very viable strategy on that specific slate. Now, over time, if you're constantly fading round 1, I think that's going to be a losing strategy, but there are certain slates where it can work. How about we middle it? How about we say top 10? How about we say no players, no top 10 ADP players? But I like that suggestion. And it's more, again, a lot of times these challenges are just good exercises for making sure you're not always fully anchored to ADP. All right, I think I want to do Jaden Daniels as my Q tag, so I'm not going to take Lamar Jackson. I will begrudgingly take Brock Bowers after I had 20% of him last week, and he flopped again for only 7.8 points, but I'm a glutton for punishment here. Let's see. Nico, Malik Neighbors with Dart, Rome, Igbuka, Devontae Adams. I've just been playing Devontae Adams every single week. 19.6 points last week, 2 weeks ago, 13.1 against Philly. Do really like this game environment here versus Indiana. I'm just not sold right now on the Texans. Nico's such a hard click for me. Dart is interesting, right? I mean, just had that massive game week 2 and then came crashing back down to earth week 3. You get Dart week 4. My gut says he's a little overvalued here. Igbuka seems fine. But yeah, wide receiver here is just completely wide open, I would say, after Amon-Ra and Puka come off the board. So yeah, don't hesitate to scroll in this range. Let's see here. Adrian coming in with some start-sit questions. Was offered JSN for Bucky. My squad hurt CMC, Bucky, Justin Jefferson, McConkey, Devontae, Kelsey, Breece Hall, Omarion, Dobbins, Downs, Jennings, Olave, Scatterbo, Franklin. All right, this is a good team. Man, JSN is like, he's basically miniature Puka right now. He is like the highest floor wide receiver outside of Puka. Looking at your wide receivers, Jefferson is so relative to his price. McConkey, Devontae. Honestly, I think I would do that. I mean, your running backs are solid. You have CMC, you have Hampton, you have Breece Hall, you have Scatterbo. I think you're upgrading your starting lineup more with JSN than you are with Bucky. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Let's see. Good question from Nick. What do you aim for in terms of exposure percentage on a player you really like that week? Yeah, so I will say as a drafter, I'm not someone who hawks my exposures too much in real time, but I obviously look at them once I'm done drafting, etc. And I'm rarely over 25 or 30%. I think I had 25% Brock Bowers in week 3. I had 30% James Conner in week 2. Even really liking a guy, that's about the top that I'm going to get to personally, because I like playing a little bit more spread out exposures. If I have a guy on more than 1/3 of every team, I don't know. I feel like that's a level of overconfidence that I'm not even okay with when I'm generally putting in 150 lineups. So yeah, I would say the most for me would be somewhere between 20 to 30% on a player I really like on a given slate. All right, this is the Q tag prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I lock up Jaden Daniels. Obviously, you can wait on him here, but for the prompt, I want to make sure that I get Jaden. And there just aren't a ton of other really solid Q tags on this slate. And then let's see what we want to do with this other pick here. We could pair Ricky Pearsall with CMC, although I don't love him as much with Jennings back. Drake London, you could play in a bounce back game, maybe opposite Jaden Daniels. I don't mind that. Debo without McLaurin kind of just stacked up with Daniels, I think is interesting as well. Let's play it. Let's not force the stack, and let's play Drake London opposite in that same game. I actually kind of want to look at the Drake London utilization here because I don't know it off the top of my head. He's obviously had a disappointing start to the season, but I want to see just kind of where his role has exactly been. All right, so let's go game by game. So his utilization score, week 1 was kind of the Drake London that we kind of expect, right? Utilization score of 83, 36% of the targets, 83% of the routes. The routes are never an issue with Drake London. He had 100% of the routes in week 2, 93% there, but his targets basically were cut in half in week 2 and 3. He was down to 19 and 18% there. His ADOT's always been fairly low, but just a big dip in the targets there. And I think we can blame a good bit of this on Drake London, certainly. But it hasn't been, or sorry, on Michael Penix, but it hasn't been the Drake London I think we were hoping for when we were drafting this guy in the second round of best ball drafts. I'm going to look at it in comparison to the other wide receivers on the Falcons here as well. Let me refresh this. And then we got to make my final pick here. Let's see. We're not going to do Genty on a Bowers team. We're not going to do Kyron on a Devontae team. Judkins is kind of an interesting scroll this week. His role continues to grow. He looks awesome. I do also like Kamara and Tony Pollard this week as scrolls after first glance. This could certainly be more of a wide receiver, a 3 wide receiver team. But let's go ahead and let's do Judkins here at ADP of 35.2. I do think like going forward, Judkins is going to be a guy that we are drafting in the 20s, you know, if this trajectory for him continues. So I'll go ahead and take him here. Here's the first team in the books. If you guys are joining late, the prompt was I must select a player with a Q tag. So we went ahead and went with Jaden Daniels. And again, I know we've talked about this on previous weeks. If you guys watch my content or you've taken the Underdog masterclass that I put together with the Badge Bros, we talk about this concept a lot. But taking these guys who have a top 3 ceiling at their position or even a top 5 ceiling like Jaden Daniels does, it's just a no-brainer with the way the swap mechanics work. So even though we take Jaden Daniels here, if for some reason he doesn't go, I can swap to on this team because these quarterbacks weren't selected. Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Stafford, Dart, Purdy, any of these guys I can swap to because they were not selected. So there's just basically no downside risk to gobbling up a good amount of Jaden Daniels at this price. Because if he goes, he will project for the 3rd highest ceiling on the slate, right? He'll probably still be behind Allen and Lamar, but he's right in that mix. So that's kind of the thesis of the play. with the Q tag here. So we go Jaden Daniels, Christian McCaffrey, Quinshon Judkins, Devontae Adams, Drake London, and Brock Bowers on this first team. What's up, Paul? What's up, Fantasy Football Garage? How we doing here? Just got my first team in the books. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel. Chad gave us a fun suggestion to add here no top 10 ADP players. I have late game hammer only. Use only 2 games. You have to use a double stack, 3 mini stacks, a 1-1-3-1 build. So we'll push ourselves in a few different directions. And like I said, if you guys have any other suggestions for me to add to the wheel, go ahead and let me know. All right, 3 mini stacks. This is fun. So I'm going to define mini stack as basically I use only 3 games. So I have a player from each side of the game in 3 different games. So this will be a fun one. We weren't even that far off, like in this lineup. It would be something like, all right, you have Daniels and Drake London. You have, Jonathan Taylor and Devontae Adams. You have Quinshon Judkins and Jamison Williams. So those kind of, we tend to call those mini correlations here. So we'll be concentrated to 3 games, and we'll see if we can build a logical team here under these confines. I should also mention one tweak this week. Last week, the main battle royale, which is the biggest contest on Underdog, it's a $7 entry. Last week, it had, I think, around 55,000 entries. This week, that's been boosted to 64,308 entrants. So almost 10,000 more entries this week. Pretty exciting stuff because, one, it means that the contest isn't going to fill as early as it has been. I believe it filled Sunday morning, early Sunday morning. It might have even been late Saturday night. I can't even remember. I got all my drafts in Saturday night because I was afraid of it filling early. But I know that the lobby has not had the flagship BR after like 8 or 9 a.m. Eastern these previous few weeks. So they make it bigger this week. However, they don't change the first place prize, which I really like, because what it means is more prizes in the top 10, more prizes in the top 100. They really took that extra 10,000 in entries and spread it out. So right now, one barometer to always look for a really nice, smooth payout structure is if the 10th place prize money is 10% of first. And that's exactly what we have here, a $5,000 10th place and a $50,000 first place. So really nice to be able to get a 5K score for finishing in the top 10 here. All right. Like I said, I think Puka deserves to go 102. Lo and behold, he goes 102 here. So I will take Jonathan Taylor. And now I know that I'm going to have to get one Ram on this team, right? And it's probably going to have to be Devontae Adams again, because I don't really want to use Kyron Williams. I don't love the correlation of 2 running backs in the same game, especially running backs who are expected to see more carries when their team is winning. They're not going to catch as many passes. I just don't love it. It can certainly get there, but it's not a correlation I want to lean into a ton. Let's see here. Let's mix it up a little bit. It's a little tricky to go. You know what? We could go. Let's go neighbors. The thing I like about neighbors is we can go with Scatabo as a running back opposite, or sorry, no, Chargers. We can get Omari and Hampton coming back, or we can get any other wide receiver on the Chargers as well. So thinking through this mini stack challenge that we're giving ourselves here, I want to leave a little bit of optionality. I wish Cam Scatabo was a little sneakier this week. He has an ADP of 32.2. That means he's going to be drafted a fair amount, probably 50 to 60% of the time. He's just set up for a smash workload here. Speaking of like great utilization, just without Tyrone Tracy, the amount of pass game work he should be expected to get, all the goal line stuff. Cam Scatabo, definitely a very solid play here. Similar to neighbors, there's uncertainty, I think, with Jackson Dart at the helm. But if anything, I think that results in them feeding Scatabo even more than normal. Let's see here. What is S-Raft going to do? We'll figure it out. They go Tyler Warren. I'm going to go ahead and take Derrick Henry. I'm going to take Derrick Henry. It means I can do something with Kelsey opposite him. I could do the Xavier Worthy Q tag if I wanted. I could play Mahomes at quarterback. So some easy mini correlations there. Yeah, this is a good shout by Garage. I was seeing all three Charger wide receivers going in the last round, each a great play this week against the Giants. I agree. I think there's like a flop lag element where a lot of people in DFS circles were really excited about the Chargers last week. If you were using any of the simulation products, they loved the Chargers in that spot. They don't really get home. You know, Justin Herbert only scores 15.6 points. I have to think through this because Devontae Adams went, and I promised mini correlations here. So I do not. This is going to end up being a bad team. This is going to end up being a bad team. I'm going to go ahead and do Lad opposite Neighbors. But if I'm going to stay true to this prompt, I should have taken Adams first because now I'm really up a creek. I basically have to take Stafford or Higbee. Is Higbee even draftable right now? I mean, he had 4 targets week 2, no targets week 1, 2 targets. I honestly think Stafford's probably the play. I like naked Stafford. I think Higbee actually is what you do. I mean, tight end is such a low-scoring position. I think I go Mahomes and then Higbee is the play. This is probably the grossest challenge we've had yet, and I messed it up by not going with Devontae Adams. I got a little too cute because I saw Derrick Henry slide past ADP. Yeah, I'm doing Kelsey with Henry. I have to do Mahomes with Henry because if I go Kelsey with Henry, then I have to do Stafford at quarterback. And naked Stafford does not feel good. I mean, the concentrated target share between Adams and Puka is so massive that I just don't know how naked Stafford without those two gets home. I guess it would have to be they each score like 17 points and Stafford throws an extra 2 touchdowns, like 1 to Tutu and 1 to Higbee. I don't know. It just seems thin to me. I was already done at running back, guys. This is why I was in a bind. I already had Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. So I have to do Tyler Higbee. Oh, my God. That's bad. I want to go look at Henry's utilization or Higbee's utilization and just see how bad this click was. All right, so over the 3 weeks, he's leading the team in routes. His targets per route run is awful. Dennis Allen and Colby Parkinson have a higher targets per route run. 6% of the targets. He has a negative ADOT on the year. Negative 1.4. That's really bad. That does not make me feel good. What happened in week 3? What did he do in week 3? Week 3, 62% of the routes, 3% of the targets, negative 5 ADOT. Yeah, I don't feel good about that. Don't try to recreate this challenge at home. And if you do, make sure you lock up Devontae Adams early. So here's the final squad. We said we were going to get 3 mini correlations. From Chiefs Baltimore, we have Patrick Mahomes and Derrick Henry. I like that correlation. From the Giants and Chargers game, we have Neighbors and Ladd McConkey. I like that correlation. And then the one I don't like, Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Higbee. But again, if you are going to punt any position, you don't have to punt, but if you're going to get weird and you're going to get wild at any one position on Underdog, it's tight end, right? Week after week, it is both the most volatile scoring position. It is the least scoring or the least high scoring position. So could I survive? I'm going to need a touchdown from Tyler Higbee, but I could survive a 10-point week from Tyler Higbee here probably. All right, let's see. We'll answer another question here before we spin the wheel again. Anthony has a start sit question. The buddy just fired me back a trade. Team A. Why aren't you just saying me? Okay. I don't know who Team A is or Team B, so you're going to get my objective thought. Team A gets Brian Thomas Jr., Ashton Genty, or Matthew Golden. Team B gets Drake London, Devontae Adams, Ja'Cory Krosky, Merritt. Who do you go with? So obviously, Genty is a pretty big win over Merritt for me. The wide receivers on Team B, though, are slightly better. Adams, I definitely would take over BTJ these days. London, still slight lean him, although Golden is looking better. This is a tough one, but give me the Team A side. Give me the Genty. Golden has been close to some massive plays. I do think the volume with BTJ is going to ultimately result in some better games. This Michael Penix-led Falcons team is such a disaster. I don't feel good about that. And Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, I do think he's going to be the starter there by the end of the season, but it's going to take some time. They're very clearly okay using Rodriguez, using McNichols right now. So I'd rather buy low on Genty. I think he's the best player in that deal, and just hope that the Raiders figure it out and start using their best players. All right, let's spin the wheel again here. If you guys are just tuning in, this is the DFS Jam every Thursday at noon Eastern here on the Fantasy Life channel. I'm talking DFS. I have indulged some start-sit questions season long, but if you guys have DFS-specific, underdog-specific questions, happy to answer those in the chat. Otherwise, I will keep spinning the wheel and getting some challenges. All right, this one was fun. I put this on right before I went live, the late game hammer only. So as I kind of pulled up earlier, we have 4 really good games in the late window. So this team I'm about to draft can only feature players from these 4 games. Chargers, not Chargers Giants, that's 1 p.m. Sorry. Colts Rams, who we've been talking about a decent bit here. Jags Niners, Ravens, Chiefs, Bears, Raiders. Those are the only teams that are going to be in our player pool for this next draft. What I was trying to talk about with the late game hammer on Underdog and the sweat experience is there's 2 types of sweats, right? There's the one where you pull out to an early lead and you're just trying to hold. That's what the winner of the Battle Royale had last week. So shout out to Alec, whose username is the Fantasy Grinder. He was leading the Battle Royale slate going into the late game, sitting in first place, had no players going in the late window. He had Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Mason, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, Hunter Henry. All of those guys played in the 1 p.m. window. So he's now sitting watching these 4 p.m. games, praying McBride doesn't go off, praying Christian McCaffrey doesn't go off, praying that none of these guys charge him down, and he holds. But that's a really tough sweat. The other sweat is where you're charging, where you're like, you don't even know that you have some teams that are live because you have zeros from the 1 p.m. window, and then those teams slowly charge. That's generally, from a mental health perspective, I'd much rather have the charging sweats. And that's why this build or this challenge is kind of fun, because when the 4 p.m. window starts, you're not even going to see this team. It's gonna have 0. So this is the ultimate. What if the 4 p.m. games go off? And we are going to start here. You could start with either CMC, JT, or Puka. All of these guys play late. We'll go ahead and just do CMC though. He fulfills our challenge for a late game, and he is the 101 this week. All right, Garage says he needs to start 2. T. Higgins versus the Broncos, Mooney versus Washington, Shaheed versus Buffalo, Burden versus Las Vegas, Godwin, home league with CD out. So I will say, if Godwin goes, and he was a full participant yesterday in practice. If Godwin goes, you're starting him for sure. After that, I think it's between Mooney and Shaheed for me. So if Godwin doesn't go, I would play Shaheed and Mooney. I do think Burden's fun, but his snap share is still really low. Only played, I think it was 30% of the snaps last week. I think they're going to continue to kind of slow play him. So I think you're wish casting a little bit of a big role, at least for season long. I wouldn't mind taking on some of that risk in DFS, but season long, I think you just go Mooney and Shaheed. They're seeing a really good chunk of targets there. And we could even look here at the utilization tool to compare some of these guys. Let's just toss them in here so we can see. Shaheed, Mooney. We can throw Higgins in here, but yeah, Higgins just, I guess if like Surtain, is chasing around Jamar or whatever, I could maybe squint and see it. And I'm not even going to put Godwin up here because I feel like that one's just kind of binary if he goes or not. But yeah, look at this garage. Top two in utilization pretty clearly. Mooney and Shaheed there. Really good target percentage. Let's even just filter for week 3. Luther Burden obviously pops ahead, but the routes at 31% aren't good. But yeah, Shaheed at 87%, Mooney at 87%. For me, pretty clearly Shaheed and Mooney if Godwin isn't available. And then I think slight lean to Mooney if Godwin goes and you're deciding between Shaheed and Mooney. All right, so let's remember our challenge here. Late game hammer only. I'm about to pick at the 2-3 turn. We can go Lamar here. We haven't done a Lamar team yet. We passed on him in the first draft because we wanted to get the Jaden Daniels Q tag. In the second draft, we went with Derrick Henry. Either Lamar or Brock Bowers fulfill this late game hammer. Chicago and Las Vegas playing late. Chiefs and Raiders playing late. All right, so Bowers goes. So yeah, let's definitely do Lamar here. And then let's figure out what we want to do from the other late game. This could be Rome, or it could be Devontae Adams, or it could be Tyler Warren. Let's do Tyler Warren here. We'll do Lamar, and then we'll do Tyler Warren. Warren's usage continues to be pretty good. I think he's kind of a co 1A, co 1B with Michael Pittman. But in a game where they get pushed, I think there is some blow up potential for Tyler Warren. And obviously I'm reaching ahead of him relative to ADP, but I'm trying to accomplish my challenge. But I think Tyler Warren can certainly challenge for the tight end 1 on the week here. Let me go over and look at our projections this week as well. I think our projections are up now. Let's go check this out. Yeah, so we have our DFS projection. So I can look at FanDuel, which is the same scoring as Underdog. And I can even sort by ceiling here. But look at this. We have Tyler Warren as the second highest ceiling on the slate. He also has the second highest just raw projection on the slate. So yeah, this is a guy that I definitely want to have as part of my BR portfolio this week. And, we saw the Rams, they pushed the Eagles last week, and we finally saw the Eagles having to throw in the second half. It resulted in touchdowns for Brown, Goddard, and Devontae Smith. This Rams team, the way they are able to generate explosives, we see Devontae Adams get loose for a big play. They're a team now where I get pretty excited about targeting their game environments for fantasy, just because they're concentrated and they are forcing teams to score to keep up with them. So yeah, all that to say, I like Danny Dimes a lot this week. I like Tyler Warren, and I certainly think you can do some Pittman and Downs as well. Pittman and Downs strike me as pretty good scrolls. One player I would like to draft here, I would like to do Zay with Lamar. Zay kind of was the odd man out in that shootout against the Lions on Monday Night Football, but his role in weeks 1 and 2 was just absolutely elite. 9 targets, 11 targets, and then dips down to 3. I think some of the ball knowers said that he was getting more double coverage, that he was certainly the focus of the Lions defense. But I still feel pretty good about him being the the wide receiver one in the clear top playmaker on the Ravens. So let's do this. We haven't done Kyren yet. Steve was rooting for Kyren the last draft. We'll play him opposite Tyler Warren. And again, we're focusing on just these late games, and then we'll do Lamar to Zay. So the one thing I'm going to think through here is right now I have a pretty chalky team. Lamar to Zay, going to be fairly popular. CMC at the 101, Kyren, Tyler Warren. None of these guys are going to be low owned. Nearly all of these guys will be at a 90+% ownership rate this week. So for this last pick, which does have to be a wide receiver, I want to scroll here. I want to get down to some guys who have an ADP, after 34 or so. And again, play in that late window. So I'll put some ideas in here. I would say Jacoby versus Chicago would be a good one. I don't think I'd do Pittman here because I have Tyler Warren and I kind of want to play it as an alpha game from Tyler Warren. DJ Moore could be in the conversation, but man, I think he's continuing. He's getting squeezed in two directions, right? He's getting squeezed by Luther Burden really coming on. He is getting squeezed by Olamide Zaccheaus, still taking some roles there. Aaron likes BTJ. Yeah, that's a good suggestion there as well. I missed that when I was scrolling down. Thank you for that heads up. Yep, I like this thought from Robert. Jacoby's great in leverage off of 100% Bowers. Brian Thomas does go, unfortunately. Trying to see if there's any other guys here late. I'm not going to chase Trey Tucker this week. I'm sorry. Tyquan Thornton would have been interesting, but with Worthy back, I'm just not quite sure I want to buy that new role, which essentially was vacating the Xavier Worthy stuff. Jawan Jennings would be the other one down here, but I do think Jacoby makes the most sense on this team. I kind of want to play the CMC alpha game. I'm not going to venture into the Tyquan Thornton Waters. And because we need a receiver, because we want to scroll and have a unique piece, I think that leaves Jacoby Myers as the best selection for this specific team, which again, if I wasn't, beholden to the late game hammer only, there would have been a lot of other scrolls we could have discussed. But it just goes to show you can still build strong teams even under this premise. And because the games are so strong in the late window this week, it wasn't actually that difficult to pull off. So we get Lamar Jackson here at quarterback, CMC and Kyren at running back, Zay Flowers and Jacoby Myers at wide receiver, and Tyler Warren at tight end. Star Tour says, do you think a team without one of those top 8 RBs can take it down this week? So let's look at it here in the overall rankings and just see where our running back 8 cutoff is. So CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Jahmyr Gibbs, Barkley, Omarion Hampton, and Derrick Henry is the RB8. And then, so then you're down into Bucky, Kyren, Genty, Scatabo, Judkins, Hubbard, Kamara, Pollard. So I would say absolutely a team can take it down with this, because here's basically all it takes for this to happen, right? It's less about the drop-off in talent at running back, and it's more about, are there any players at the other positions that can separate? So the best thought exercise for this is, let's say Puka Nacua drops 28 points and is in the optimal lineup, and you have to play him. Let's see. If you are playing Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, if one of these guys drops 30 points and does not, and none of those other running backs are in the optimal, all of a sudden you have a scenario where these two guys have to be in the optimal lineup, which would mean you're probably shut out of the top 8 running backs anyways. So that would be a scenario where if I am saying, how does a team without a top 8 running back win? It's probably because one of 2 of these 4 players are in the optimal. Puka, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Brock Bowers. So I definitely want to have teams that feature 2 to 3 of these guys. And then I'm trying to say, okay, who are the running backs that can compete on this slate? We talked about Scatabo a little bit. We scrolled for Quinshon Judkins. I like Kamara. I like Pollard. It's definitely thinner, but I think, one thing I think about a lot when I'm drafting battle royale teams is not repeatedly getting funneled to the same construction over and over again, right? And even if that construction is quote unquote optimal, I don't want my entire portfolio to be running back over and over again. So I definitely like mixing up the builds, and I do think it's very possible to have a couple of these plays here that would end up in the optimal and keep the 2 running backs at the top from being what you need. All right, let's spin the wheel again here and get another challenge. Uncle Ted is in the chat and he's really angry today. It's okay, Uncle Ted. It's just fantasy. It's not too big of a deal. It's not a big deal, brother. Rainbow flop, no teammates. Okay, this is kind of a good change up on what we were doing before, where we kind of had a lot of correlation, specific game environments, stuff like this. This is going to be a draft where there is no correlation with teammates, which I do think, again, is an important thing to force yourself to in these builds. And we were just looking at it, right? With the winning team from last week. I think this is really instructive. So this team that took it down had Jalen Hurts naked with no teammates. There was not any correlation on this team. There was no same game. There were no teammates. Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Mason, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams. I guess, sorry, there was one game correlation there. Adams opposite Hurts. And then Hunter Henry. And what's really interesting is if you look at 3rd and 4th place here, they had virtually the same team, but they stacked Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown. And then they didn't have Hunter Henry either. But A.J. Brown scores 19.9 points. He ends up not being in the optimal lineup because he scrolled down here for Hunter Henry. Now, this drafter could have won with A.J. Brown, but they needed Hunter Henry to get it home. But I just think it's interesting to look at how some of these lineups don't force the correlation, and it actually gives you a higher ceiling here as well. So that's going to be our operative here in this next draft. To draft no teammates, all from different teams here. And we get another 101. Goodness, we are getting a bunch of influencer 101s here on this Thursday afternoon stream. Let's see here from Star Tours. Do you take the overall slate into account when it comes to correlation? My gut says a lower scoring slate is more likely to have a winner with correlation. For sure. I think there's 2 things to factor in. Obviously, like you're talking about, the overall slate. And I would say because this slate has so many high total games relative to the previous weeks, it makes me think it will be more spread out, where you kind of want the one-off pieces. You want to play the alpha games. But one other thing I think through personally is if a player has a top 20 or top 25 ADP, you really do need the alpha game from them. Like, you need them to consolidate the majority of the fantasy points on their own team. And so I'm willing to loosen up my correlation rules like deeper in the draft. Like, say you take Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman, both those guys are mostly going undrafted this week. But in the example of Tyler Warren, where he is going early, when I click Tyler Warren, I want to assume that the majority of the offense is funneling through him. So rainbow flop, no teammates. Let's mix it up. I haven't gotten a Puka team. Let's flip the board here a little bit. We'll take Puka at 101. But yeah, so the other things I'm thinking through, Star Tours, with correlation is obviously the profile of the quarterback. You know, when I look at these, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, those guys don't need to have teammate correlation. Now, I do like the oppo correlation, like we saw Adams opposite Hurts last week. You know, Josh Allen opposite Kamara. You know, Lamar Jackson opposite Kelsey. Jalen Hurts opposite Bucky or Igbuka. I do like those because it's more saying the game goes nutty and the production is consolidated with these two players. But in a tournament this big, the TLDR here is when you're having to beat 64,307 other entries, you really are going to need the nuts. You're going to need the highest scoring players. And when they have the top ADP, you're paying for that. You're saying, I am paying for you to consolidate the production. So the price, I think, is the other thing that should be a big factor into how much you think about correlation. This is a good question from Robert. How much do you factor grabbing Dipperinos for being unique? So I care a lot about Dipperinos early in the first 15 or so picks because these are the best players, right? Like if I can get multiple players at a discount who are top 15 assets, I'm going to slurp up that Dipperino every time. However, once we get into the 20s and 30s, I just don't care about it as much because a lot of times the dips are from players who don't project that much differently than the players they just dip to, if that makes sense. So I care about getting values on the really high end players, but after that, I don't care too much. All right, let's do another Derrick Henry. Let me remind myself, rainbow flop, no teammates. So I need to make sure I have no teammates here. Let's see. What do we want to do? Let's do Omar in Hampton. We haven't clicked him yet. He stepped into a bell cow role last week when Najee left. We'll get these two top running backs. We'll go Derrick Henry, Omar in Hampton, Puka Nacua, and we will continue to grab no teammates here. But yeah, back to this question. I would say like what I tend to do is I kind of make a manual cutoff on a slate as far as where I think the elite tier ends. And that's where I care about those Dipperinos. So for me here, I see Josh Allen, I see Lamar Jackson. I think you can include Bucky and Neighbors in here. I would say like right after Bucky, this is where things get a little murky. I'd love to include Bowers, but I don't know if I can lately. I don't think I can include Nico in it. Amon-Ra kind of fringe. So if any of these top 14 guys, top 13 guys fall, I'm in on it. But then you get down to this tier, right? And you're like, okay, Ladd McConkey falls 4 spots. Who cares, right? Is Ladd McConkey that different, from Jacoby Myers? They're only going to project a few points differently at most. And so that's where I just don't care about it quite as much. All right, we are back on the clock. I've not been able to do an Igbuka yet. Let's go ahead and do Igbuka here. And then we can figure out what do we want to do at quarterback. We can wait at quarterback. We can scroll a little bit here at tight end. Why don't we get a Kelsey share here? We'll get a Kelsey share. Kelsey opposite Henry, all different teammates here. And then we can look for a quarterback. I actually think Daniel Jones is perfect for this squad because we have Puka Nacua. We took Puka Nacua 101. So we're saying, hey, buddy, we need 25 plus points from you on this slate. If you're scoring 25 plus points, this is probably a pretty decent game. And you're probably getting pushed from the Colts. So Daniel Jones is a naked quarterback. I don't have to force a stack anywhere. I can play it like the week 1 game, where he scores 2 rushing touchdowns and he's the guy you need. Robert says, I had the choice in my last 2 picks between A.J. Brown or taking Debo, and I just didn't care that A.J. fell that far. Yeah, I think that's the perfect example of, if he makes sense for the team, go for it. But you're really not getting any uniqueness benefits there. All right. And Andre says, would you trade Barkley and Ridley for Genti, Igbuka in London? That's an interesting one. It's a pretty fair trade. I tend to want to be on the side of getting the best player in a deal. Barkley's definitely the best player. But I will say if you were weak at wide receiver, getting Igbuka in London is pretty good. I think the value is on the Genti side. Now, if you have to cut someone of any value, then I would probably prefer the Barkley side. But if it's just a meaningless cut, I don't mind getting into the Genti, Igbuka, London side. All right, I'm going to grab Daniel Jones here. So this prompt was rainbow flop, no teammates here. And this is how this team turned out. I really like how this one looks. Daniel Jones and Puka from that game. Derrick Henry and Omarion Hampton at running back. And Emeka Egbuka, the other wide receiver, and then Travis Kelce. And then on this team, we also get two players who are going to be lower ownership. Daniel Jones with an ADP of 34.9. He's going to be on less than 20% of teams, or selected in less than 20% of drafts. And Travis Kelce, ADP of 33.6. His ranking this week on the slate is, where is he? He's tight end 6. That'll probably put him in the 40% range. So getting two pieces that aren't going to be on 100% of rosters is something I like to do there. All right, let's do one more draft here. Appreciate everybody hanging out today and asking questions and giving me some ideas for the wheel. Let's spin the wheel one more time and see what we got here for this last challenge. All right. This is a good one. 1-1-3-1 build. So the reason this is a challenge is because the data and the results are overwhelmingly clear that two running back builds are dominant builds on Underdog. Looking at the winning lineups last year, around 88% of top 1% lineups had two running backs. Over at the in-game syndicate, Nerdy Tenor does weekly simulations on the Battle Royale slate. And each week, the two running back builds have appeared in 85% of the winning lineup. So if you just need a quick rule of thumb, about 9 out of every 10 of your lineups on Underdog should be two running back lineups. And the reason for that is it is simply easier for us to project running back scoring than it is wide receiver. We are very good collectively as an industry at Fantasy Life of projecting running back usage, which leads to running back scoring, obviously. Wide receiver, it's a trickier thing. There are a lot of elements with ceilings being hit that can get there via efficiency and not necessarily volume. Look at Trey Tucker last week. Trey Tucker is the perfect example of this dilemma. So it's not to say three wide receiver builds can't get there. It was week 2, right? Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, and Amon-Ra St. Brown all went nuclear. It's just that it's harder to reliably pair those three nutted wide receivers together than it is to pair two dominant running backs together like drafters did last week with Jordan Mason and Jonathan Taylor. So that's why this isn't something you should always be doing, but it's certainly not bad in the right circumstances. So let's see if we can build a strong 1-1-3-1 lineup here, and we'll review it at the end and see if it works. So I don't have any data on this, Garage. Garage is asking about the primetime Palooza slates. These are 3-person drafts, and they typically are only 2 to 3 gamers. So Underdog will do like a Sunday night and Thursday night football slate, or a Monday and Thursday, or a Thursday and Sunday. Sometimes there's 3-game slates. Like this weekend, I think there's one because of the is it the game in Dublin? But yeah, those are so slate specific and really dependent on the quality of the plays on the slate. So I would be a little careful overfitting historical primetime data, and I don't even have it anyways. But yeah, I think I would be way more conscious of like, what is the actual player pool on that slate? And maybe after I make a pick here, I could go look in the PTP lobby and see if I can think of a good example. We continue to get early slots here. Here's the 101 Puka. Look at this. We trendsetters here. I guess I will take CMC. Is this my third CMC out of 5 teams here? Let's go look. Yeah. So Garage is talking about potentially this slate. So there's a 3-game slate: Thursday night football, Dublin, and Sunday night football. So on this slate, right, we have Jacobs, Mason, Walker, Benson, Warren, Javonte. That's a pretty good running back slate, honestly. Wide receiver actually looks a little weaker to me relative to running back. So my just, again, snap take is looking at this slate. I would want a 2 running back slate, but I'm not convinced that that's always the case, because we have seen some slates where it can be a lot more thin there. And the simple way to kind of judge that is just, hey, do the wide receivers project more than the running backs when I'm, picking in the 4th round? Because the risk is you would never want to force a running back selection because of a rule or a macro data trend if the running back projects 5 points less than the wide receiver there. If you were looking at a situation where it was like, take Zach Charbonnet over Romeo Dobbs, and Romeo Dobbs is projecting for more. So I do think it's important to look at the projections, look at the overall context of the slate on those primetime paloozas. Yeah, PTP could just be TD hunting above all, says Garage. Certainly. All right, we haven't taken an Amon-Ra team yet. Let's go grab him with CMC. That's an interesting matchup because it's like we've seen a couple sides to Detroit, against a really tough Green Bay team on the road. In week 1, they flopped. Then they absolutely smashed at home in week 2. Now they're at home, but they're going against a very tough defense in Cleveland. But I always like the Lions at home here. So we'll grab an Amon-Ra share. Let's see. What do we want to do here? Let's go ahead and grab a Bucky. We haven't grabbed a Bucky yet. We'll do CMC and Bucky. Shit, I just messed up my own challenge because I wasn't thinking. Oh, I knew I was going to eventually do that. I tend to like to remind myself what the challenge is before I make a pick. There's like 9 wide receivers on the screen, and I scroll down to a running back that I'm not supposed to have. I'm sorry to you guys. I know you tune in to see me complete these missions to the letter of the law, and I have failed you guys. I have failed you. I like this spin. CMC is basically a receiver anyways. Aaron agrees with me, wouldn't commit to 2 running backs in the 2-game primetime Palooza slates. There usually aren't 6 good running backs, and you can find higher variance ceiling at wide receiver. And that makes sense too, right? 4 teams on the slate, 4 starting running backs, presumably. That's going to mean that 2 teams are having to take non-running back ones if they are beholden to 2 running back builds. I can't believe this was the most simple challenge I've had yet today, and I couldn't even do it. I'll take a shot of my seltzer for you guys. All right, Debo goes. Neighbors is a faller here. I don't mind taking Neighbors at this price. So we'll go CMC, Bucky, Amon-Ra, Neighbors. We have quarterback and tight end left. I don't mind, let's do Naked Herbert opposite Neighbors. That's certainly something I could see working. And then we'll get a scroll tight end here. We already did Kelsey, so I think good scrolls would be Jawan. Andrews feels like chasing, but his ADP isn't actually being steamed up. It's kind of funny that Hunter Henry and Andrews both smashed, but Henry's the one that gets pushed up this week and not Andrews. I think Zach Ertz is a good click. I think Goddard's a good click, and I honestly like both. There's a ton of these good ones. I like both Cleveland tight ends again. And Cade Otton, if Godwin doesn't go, is pretty interesting. If it's just Igbuka, Otton, if Godwin does go, the Otton stuff isn't nearly as interesting. Are we drafting JD this week? If you're talking about Jaden Daniels, absolutely. Absolutely. We took him in the first draft today. He went in this one. He's a great click. If we remove this Q tag right now, we'd look at this slate. You'd still have Allen and Lamar probably going ahead. He would have an ADP of like 11 or 12. He'd be ahead of Hurts, probably slightly behind Jackson. So taking Daniels at 34.1, I mean, you're getting like a full 3-round value on him. All right, let's see. How about this? I'm going to let you guys, I know it's short notice, but who should I take with my final tight end? Since I messed up this challenge, you guys get to pick my tight end. Juwan Johnson, Ertz, Goddard, Njoku, Fannin, Kate Otten. Who should I take? I know we're on a slight delay here, so hopefully I can get a vote in here in real time. Who's it going to be? We got 6 seconds. Can I get a vote in the chat? Kincaid? I was trying to get a scroll. but I'll let you, we'll get the suggestion in. Yeah, the only reason I kind of wanted to get a scroll is just because I didn't have any other pieces here. Yeah, 2 Juwan Johnsons came in late, but Garage got the first suggestion in, so I wanted to let the chat's voice be heard. Here's the final squad. Justin Herbert, Christian McCaffrey, Bucky Irving, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, Dalton Kincaid. It was supposed to be a 1-1-3-1 build. I am not going to remove this from the wheel. I'm going to keep this for next week because I did not accomplish it. But yeah, let me know in the chat if you guys have any other suggestions for builds. Had fun talking Underdog, DFS. Happy to talk some DraftKings as well if that ever pops up, but just a little more fun to draft teams on Underdog. But we could potentially build a team on DraftKings next week as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. I'm also going to put the audio up on my podcast feed, In a Vacuum podcast feed. I don't think it quite fits in with the Fantasy Life podcast feed, so I'm going to throw it up there if you guys want to check this out on the go. And otherwise, my other 2 shows today, I have Lulz on my channel with Brian Hooper, and then I'm doing the Battle Royale Bash on my channel at 3 p.m. Eastern. And again, drafting Battle Royale teams, but I spin the wheel. And if you're a YouTube member on my channel, you have access to the chat. You put it in a hashtag, and if your name comes up, I send you the StreamYard link. You hop on and draft teams with me footing the bill. So a fun time over there. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time on the DFS Jam. I'm Pete Overzet for Fantasy Life. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.